Hey everybody, welcome to the Morning Devo with Beau. Hope you guys are well today and ready to get into chapter 49 of the book of Genesis. We're almost done with this book, and so if you've kind of stuck with me through Genesis, you've gone through a pretty big book of the Bible. And if you ask people on this planet, how many of you guys have actually gone through the book of Genesis? Not too many people probably have. And so you've done pretty good. And boy, what an awesome book this is. Man, there is a lot to talk about with this book. I mean, you could stay in it for a long time and do many different discussions with it, and different speaking, on the various topics. I mean, it is that filled. And so we get to the end of Jacob's life, and Jacob's going to give his last words to his kids. And so we get an opportunity to kind of a little snapshot into this kind of deathbed, if you will, word to his kids. Not many of us have kind of a deathbed experience with our parents, and then not many of us have where our parents are giving us some really important last words before they go. But that's what we see is going on here. It's pretty radical when you think about it. You just go, gosh, what would it be like to be at someone's kind of their deathbed, and then they're breaking down some serious stuff that you have to remember. So then Jacob called together all of his sons and said, "Gather around me, and I will tell you what will happen to each of you in the days to come." Okay, so we see that Jacob has this time where he's going to get with his sons, and he's going to kind of tell them a prophetic word, something about their future. Again, this doesn't happen. It didn't happen with me, with my parents, where, I was at both of their kind of sides in their last days. And there was no kind of big, hey, I got to tell you something, kind of thing. That does happen in people's lives. And I'm sure some of it is just shocking what maybe is shared with them. But let's see what Jacob's going to say to his sons. It says, "Come and listen, sons of Jacob. Listen to Israel, your father. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my strength, the child of my vigorous youth. You are first in rank and first in power. But you are as unruly as a flood, and you will be first no longer, for you went to bed with my wife, and you defiled my marriage couch." Ouch. It's rough when your pop points out not only your good parts, but also your not so good parts, right? You're not so good. Jesus does this with the churches. And if you've ever read the last book of the Bible, the book of Revelation, there's a couple chapters there where Jesus does this with 7 particular churches. He kind of gives them the plus and he gives them the negative. And I would imagine that if God were to talk to me today in a direct way, there would be some encouragement, and there'd also be some real hard truth that would be in there as well. Jacob says to Reuben, "Hey, man, you have this vigorous youth. You are strong. You are powerful, but man, you are unruly. Am I unruly? Do I have all this physical strength, physical power? My youth, when you're young, you feel strong and powerful and nothing can defeat you, but yet you're unruly. You're not tameable. You tend to get out of control. You tend to push things. You tend to become contentious, and you can't seem to rein it in. That's like Reuben. Am I like that? It's something to think about in a devotion. And it says, "Simeon and Levi are two of a kind. Their weapons are instruments of violence. May I never join in their meetings. May I never be a party to their plans. For in their anger they murdered men and they crippled oxen just for sport. A curse on their anger, for it is fierce. A curse on their wrath, for it is cruel. I will scatter them among the descendants of Jacob. I will disperse them throughout Israel. So you have Simeon and Levi who've done some pretty radical things, if you remember, in the book of Genesis. And the dad says to them, hey, you guys, man, I don't want to be a part of the kind of stuff you guys are into because it's violent. Have you ever met people that are just into violence? They tend to hate and they tend to dig it. You know, it's amazing how people find, in a sense, joy or happiness from various things. Human beings are like that. You know, humans can get happy for so many different reasons. And that's what's bizarre and so disturbing about the human condition. Is that it's not just, it's not, to some people you can help someone, truly help someone, and it makes you happy. To other people, they like to hurt people, and that makes them happy. That makes them temporarily feel good. They like that. They like to get over on other people. They feel more comfortable in a place of dominating than not. To put someone down excites them. They get stoked. To hurt someone, people, it's so crazy to think about this kind of violence where people can literally hurt someone. We call it rape, and yet still, the perpetrator is finding pleasure in it. I mean, this is radical. Levi and Simeon. Do you see that kind of disturbing nature in you at all? Now, I would love to say, no way, not me. But, the Bible is so good, man. It teaches us, take heed lest you think you stand, lest you fall. Meaning you don't think you got a problem with that? Do I remember growing up in elementary school and junior high? How many times did I want to get over on a kid or hit him or beat him up or do stuff? That was unfortunately so much a part of my growing up in Southern California in public school system. It was about dominating tetherball, dominating handball, dominating people in general. And there's something you kind of get over on that. And as you grow up, you tend to see that fighting becomes a way for people they like it. They like it because they can dominate. They can dominate over people. Simeon and Levi. I think I see some Reuben in me, that vigorous unruliness. I also see some Simeon and Levi in me. That's a brutal thing. It says, Judah, your brothers will praise you. You will grasp your enemies by the neck. All your relatives will bow before you. Man, Judah's going to be like kingly, the dominant. And it says, Judah, my son, is a young lion that has finished eating its prey. Judah's linked to a lion. That's interesting, right? Lion of the tribe of Judah. Jesus is from that line. And one of his titles is the Lion of the tribe of Judah. Like a lion, he crouches and lies down like a lioness. Who dares to rouse him? The scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from his descendants until the coming of the one to whom it belongs, the one whom all nations will honor. Wow. Now, verse 10 is a very cool prophecy to the son Judah. It talks about him becoming they will be a kingly line through Judah. The scepter, the rulership of Judah will not depart, nor the ruler's staff from his descendants. He's going to be a descendant of rulers, of the leaders. And it says it won't depart from them. And then it says, until the coming of the one to whom it belongs, the one whom all the nations will honor. Now, we've been waiting for a child to come. This is from the very beginning of Genesis. A child that will be born, that will redeem the world, to bring peace between God and the human species. And we've been wondering, what line is this going to be? We know it's going to be in Jacob's line, but we've been wondering, is it Benjamin? Is it Joseph, the favored sons of Jacob? Well, this prophecy points to Judah, that Judah will be the honored kingly line, and that they will have rulership, and then they will somehow lose that rulership when this coming one, to whom the kingly line it really belongs to, he is a king, but he's going to come, and all the nations will honor him. Wowee. Now, there's some things to really break down with this prophecy concerning Judah, but you can kind of see already that, for our purposes here in the devotion, that the Messiah, this one who will come, could potentially fit this, the one who all nations are going to honor. And so it's a really cool kind of timeline, you see, in a way, that the scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from his descendants, until the coming of the one to whom it belongs. It seems like Judah will be reigning, the line of Judah, and then the scepter will depart from Judah, and then the coming of the true king from Judah, the rightful king from Judah, will come on the scene, and all nations will honor. Wow, it sounds kind of cool, and it's very cool the more you study this passage, for sure. So Judah, honored, kingly line. Very cool. We're really tipped off that, boy, Judah might be the line we want to look at. Now it says, he ties his foal to a grapevine, the colt of his donkey to a choice vine. He washes his clothes in wine, his robes in the blood of grapes. His eyes are darker than wine, and his teeth are whiter than milk. Wow, what a description. And, robes in the blood of grapes. So very interesting, again, about Judah. Judah wasn't the greatest of men, meaning we knew that he wasn't the Messiah, but this definitely points to something happening through the line of Judah that's quite kingly. He ties his foal to it says Zebulun will settle by the seashore and will be a harbor for ships. His borders will extend to Sidon. So he's going to be a sea guy. Issachar is a sturdy donkey resting between two saddle packs. When he sees how good the countryside is and how pleasant the land, he will bend his shoulder to the load and submit himself to hard labor. So Issachar is the hard-working person, it seems like. Zebulun will be the person by the seashore, working on the ships. And then it says Dan will govern his people like any other tribe in Israel. And Dan will be a snake beside the road, a poisonous viper along the path that bites the horse's hooves so its rider is thrown off. I will trust in you for salvation, O Lord. Man, Dan, you see, God, it sounds good at the beginning, right? Dan will govern his people like any other tribe in Israel. So it seems like Dan was going to somehow try to govern. And then it says Dan will be a snake beside the road, a poisonous viper along the path that bites the horse's hooves so its rider's thrown off. Ugh, doesn't sound like it's going to be too good. Sneaky kind of guy. Slithering, waiting to bite. And then it says Gad, and then I love Jacob says, I will trust you for salvation, O Lord. I bet you Jacob's sharing this, and I'm not sure how this is quite going. This might be an interesting, little movie trailer of Jacob and his brothers. And it says, Asher will dine on rich foods and produce food fit for kings. Naphtali is a doe set free that bears fruitful fawns. Joseph is the foal of a wild donkey, at a spring. One of the wild donkeys on the ridge. Archers attacked him savagely. They shot at him and harassed him, but his bow remained taut. and his arms were strengthened by the hands of the mighty one of Jacob, by the shepherd, the rock of Israel. Cool names for God, right? Shepherd, a very classic name of God that seems to be continuing in the book of Genesis, this theme of God being a shepherd. Also, the rock. We're going to see that develop as well, this idea of God being a rock. And not like a literal rock, but as in solid, the rock of Israel. It's kind of neat to think of God in those ways too. He's shepherding you, and also he's a solid foundation. You know, everybody's got someone that's shepherding them. It doesn't matter. I mean, if I was raised, of course, more atheistic. And so, but I had shepherds, man. I had a crew, I had people, I had friends. People shepherd me. People were influential in my life. I was moved by people. And also, I was on a foundation. I'm not sure if it was a rock, if it was a solid foundation, but I certainly had some foundation. Some people's foundations are their parents, but their parents are pretty shaky. And my parents certainly struggled a lot. And so that was a very shaky foundation. And so you try to find other foundations, maybe your friends, maybe your peer groups, maybe you find a political party that, really, maybe you find a culture, like some subculture in your town or in the country you're in, and that becomes your foundation. But what happens when that foundation gets cracked? Are you on a foundation that is shaky? That's always a good question to ask in a day. What is my foundation really on? Is it on this person or that person, or is it on something more substantial, i.e. God? God is the greatest foundation because God doesn't change. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. He is eternal, meaning he's not subject to the things of this world, the decay of this world. He's beyond that. And so that sounds like a solid foundation. But many of us definitely put our foundations in university professors or, artists or composers or writers or things like that. And that becomes our foundation to life. Then it says, may the God of your father help you. And we're talking about Joseph here. And may the Almighty bless you with the blessings of heaven above and the blessings of the watery depth below and the blessings of the breast and womb. May my fatherly blessings on you surpass the blessings of my ancestors, reaching to the height of the eternal hills. May these blessings rest on the head of Joseph, who is a prince among his brothers. Of course, Joseph is the person who is the political guy in Egypt. And it says, Benjamin is a ravenous wolf, devouring his enemies in the morning and dividing his plunder in the evening. Ugh, not so good for Benjamin. Is my attitude, like Benjamin? Am I a ravenous wolf, devouring his enemies in the morning, dividing his plunder in the evening? Am I like that? Just ready to pounce on people. It's cool to read through this list of the brothers and the prophecies that are made concerning them, because we can always just look at our own lives and go, hey, am I like, am I a hardworking person? Am I like that person? Or am I a unruly person? Or am I a violent person? Or am I a person who's, a person who likes to rule and govern? Am I a person who, am I a servant? What am I like? We see that these sons all have character qualities in the prophetic messages that are given to them. And we certainly can relate to some of those. I tend to see myself in a kind of a real way, meaning I tend to see that, I potentially could do anything wrong. And so I don't have much confidence in the flesh. And the Bible tells us, do not have confidence in the flesh, right? Don't put your confidence in the flesh. That's not a good foundation. We are to trust in the Lord and trust in God. So these are the 12 tribes of Israel, and this is what their father said as he told his sons goodbye. He blessed each one with an appropriate message. Then Jacob instructed them, "Soon I will die and join my ancestors. Bury me with my father and grandfather in the cave in the field of Ephron the Hittite. This is the cave in the field of Machpelah near Mamre in Canaan, that Abraham bought from Ephron the Hittite as a permanent burial site." Remember, Abraham wanted that land. And it says, "There Abraham and his wife Sarah are buried. There Isaac and his wife Rebekah are buried. And there I buried Leah. And this is the plot of land in the cave that my grandfather Abraham bought from the Hittites." When Jacob had finished this charge to his sons, he drew his feet into his bed, breathed his last, and joined his ancestors in death. Wow. Joined his ancestors. Man, just as they died, so he died. This idea of joining them, very interesting and very cool. Man, Jacob's life, what a crazy life. What a wild life. A very dysfunctional family kind of life. A life that, Jacob's gone through ups and downs. I was talking to Tina the other day at the church, and she was talking about how Jacob's just gone through just about anything anybody could go through. And, it's so true. Jacob, I think wanted one wife and ended up, the situation was he ended up with four. And it's not like he really sought out those four. It's really odd. It was a really bizarre situation that happened. And then we see what happened with his kids and how there was favoritism in the house, and there was favoritism in his marriages, and there was jealousy and envy, and his sons got so jealous and so envious that they ended up wanting to kill their brother Joseph, and sure enough, they sold him as a slave to the Ishmaelites, and he ended up in Egypt, and then he ended up on a rape charge and ended up in jail, and Joseph in jail had to go through years of being in that situation, and then gets exalted to a right hand of Pharaoh and becomes a political administrator in Egypt, quite a powerful man, and provides a salvation, if you will, for his brothers and his dad at a time of an extreme famine in the Middle East. And wow. So Jacob has lived a long life, and he's got to be kind of tired after all this. But it shows me something that, people that follow God, it's not so simple. There's a lot that goes on in a life. And when we look into anybody's life, there's a lot of things happening. There's a lot of reasons why people are the way they are and the situations that they're in. Jacob wouldn't be allowed in a church. I mean, let's face it. Churches wouldn't allow a guy like Jacob in. I mean, he's gone through the way things worked out. There's no way. And it's radical. We'd be blown away by a guy. If we met a guy like Jacob, we'd be just like shocked. Like, what? How many wives you got? How many kids you got? How many? Like what's going on in your family? It would be, our minds would be really blown away. And it makes me really pull back a little bit and just think that in people's lives there always is a lot happening, and there's always a lot that has happened. The backstories of people, the backstories of their grandmas, their grandpas. Have you ever seen like those old pictures of your descendants? Has anybody ever pulled those out before and said, hey, this was your great grandmother, this was your great great grandmother, and this is and you kind of learn a little bit of your lineage. Whenever you're learning about your lineage, something always tends to come out, right? That's kind of mind-blowing. You go, whoa, I didn't know that. Wow, and this. And there's so many different things. People going through times of famine, people going through times where they have no money, people traveling, people migrating to different lands. Really a lot. I don't think, I would imagine most of us, when we were critiquing people, when we're cutting them down or when we're judging them, I would imagine, it's in our family too. Like whatever we're criticizing is in our family as well, if you just look into it. Yeah, we don't have much room to judge because none of us are perfect people. None of us have it all together. And I'm reminded of that when I think of Jacob. I'm also reminded of a guy who had encounters with God that were super special. And they impacted him in a mighty way. So much so that he trusted God to carry on through his sons. And he trusted God in sharing with his sons. He trusted him in the prophetic messages he gave to his sons. He was trusting God, that God was going to continue and bring them back into the promised land and give them that land, and they were going to flourish and they were going to grow. And yeah, they were going to have character qualities, no doubt. Some of them good, some of them not so good. But Jacob trusted God. He remembered the incredible encounter he had with God, the wrestling with God, his hip being, jarred, if you will. His name being changed, right, from Jacob to Israel. The reiteration of the promise that was given to Jacob, that was given to his grandfather, Abraham, and given to his father, Isaac. And like us, even though all of our lives can be really muddy in a lot of ways, it's amazing that there's these beautiful encounters with God, these amazing kind of grace moments that speak to us and touch us, and our eyes get open to who the true and living God is, and the wonderful work of God's Son Jesus and what he's done for us, and it impacts our life and changes us. And Jacob was that guy who had these kind of encounters, and it just led him to trust God, even up to the end. I'm going to trust God. I'm going to share with my kids what's on my heart, but he's trusting God in it. And that's what we want to do, is we want to have mercy. We want to, he has shown thee, O man, what is good and what the Lord requires of thee, but to do justly and to love mercy, to walk humbly with our God, right? To love mercy, to do justly, to do what is right, to love mercy, to love it. Do I love mercy, or do I love contention, or do I want to be unruly, or do I find my happiness in violence, or do I want to walk humbly with God? And also, not only do I want to remember being merciful on people, but I also want to remember to trust the Lord and be grateful for those special encounters that God gives me in my life. And sometimes they're, near in distance, and sometimes it's far. You'll have an encounter with God, and then, man, something else will happen, but it might be years later. It's always nice when they're closer, for sure. So very special. It's neat too that, the work that the Holy Spirit does in our life is that we can draw near to God daily, and He draws near to us, and we can experience a beautiful relationship with God in a daily way too. That's the work of the Holy Spirit in our life, given through Jesus. So, man, really cool to think about Jacob a little bit. And now we want to hone in on Judah a little bit. We want to think that Judah might be the line that the Messiah is going to come through, because it sounds very kingly, very like the king will be honored by all nations. Everybody in the world is going to honor someone from the line of Judah. Isn't that interesting? Who's going to be honored from the line of Judah that everybody in the world is going to, in a sense, bow to? Wow, pretty radical. Okay, so Genesis 49 in the books. You guys have a great day. and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.